at the academic experience from a teaching perspective, we now welcome Professor Gérard Garcia, who is a part of LLM program. Professor Garcia, the first question for you is, could you briefly please describe the main objectives and focus of the course you are teaching? Can you please switch on your microphone, please? Can you hear us?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, nice, welcome.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer, for that quick introduction. So your question was, how can I briefly describe the topics that I teach? Well, I basically teach two courses. I teach Anglo-Saxon contracts and contract management. And for the Anglo-Saxon contracts, they're basically, the main objectives is to familiarize the students with the history, the procedures, and the role of legal professionals in common law countries, and more particularly in the United States. We also want to expose the students that come from the civil law tradition to the way common law lawyers, judges, and business persons approach contracting. That's a second objective. Another objective is to prepare the students for contract negotiation by emphasizing the constraints and opportunities imposed by the different business environments that they will encounter. And finally, what I try to transfer to teach to my students is the do's and don'ts of contract negotiations, all the things that I wish I knew when I was a young lawyer starting off a few years ago. So those are the main objectives.
Yes. What teaching methods or tools do you use to keep students engaged and enhance learning?
Well, what I try to do is I try to develop the students' analytical and verbal skills by using the comparative approach. In other words, I try to invite the students to present in class the differences between mostly French law, which is where most of the students come from, and compare that to common law countries and common law ways of thinking on the different aspects of contracts. That's one of the things that I try to do. And I also try to introduce the students to contract drafting and bring their attention to litigated issues through the examination of real life situations. We study some of the famous case laws that you see a lot in Anglo-Saxon legal studies. And finally, I incorporate as much as I can of my many years of contract negotiation and drafting experience to illustrate the different concepts that may be very theoretical. Well, I try to bring in true life experience and true life stories to illustrate these different concepts.
Nice. Maybe we have tonight some students who will be with us next year at the LLM program, and I think they want to know what you expect from students in terms of participation and commitment in this course.
Full commitment. Full commitment. You have to study hard. No, basically, my approach is I do expect commitment and participation. I was trained and raised as an American lawyer, and in the Anglo-Saxon system, what you receive, and this is what I do with my class, is before the very first class, each student receives the course syllabus detailing the exact topics that will be covered in every class, and I stay and I only cover those topics that have been listed on the syllabus. And this provides the student with the possibility of preparing for each class. And they know what the issues are, what the questions will be, and what the topics will be in that particular class. And so this gives them an opportunity to prepare. And especially today with the easy access to internet, this is something that is fairly easy to do. And then finally, it also gives the students the opportunity to prepare the vocabulary that will be used in the class and some of the terminology that will be used. I do a lot of emphasis on vocabulary and terminology because there are many, as we say in French, faux amis. In other words, words that have the exact same pronunciation in French and in English, but do not at all mean the same thing under Anglo-Saxon concepts. So that's another way for the student to prepare, to work on their vocabulary. And the idea is to, at the end of the course, to speak good legal English.
Mm-hmm. Nice. How is the course structured, and what key topics or activities are included?
Okay, they're basically three. My course in Anglo-Saxon contracts is basically divided into three parts. First, the first part is an introduction to the common law tradition and common law contracts, the history, where do common law contracts come from. We also talk a lot about the different legal traditions throughout the world and how they compare. So that's the first part of the course. I do a quick introduction on the very legal, I do a high level view of the legal systems in England and in the United States. As I say often, I say it at every class. For example, in the United States, you have 50 states and potentially 50 different laws. And that's something that you have to keep in mind. So we talk about that. That's the first thing. Then after that, we enter into the essential elements of common law contracts. What constitutes a contract under common law? And you have to be able to identify those different those elements. And then finally, the third part is we enter into specific contract topics, such as what is a breach of contract, or how will your contract be interpreted in a court of law, in an Anglo-Saxon court of law. The one thing that I try to say to the students is that if you have the chance of working in an international environment, there's 8 or 9 chances out of 10 that if you are negotiating a contract, the person sitting across the table from you will probably be an Anglo-Saxon lawyer or a person trained in the Anglo-Saxon system. And so the idea is for the students to understand what is the vocabulary that he's using, why is he using that vocabulary, why is he drafting the contract in this particular format. For example, if you have a Chinese person, a Chinese lawyer, well, there's a good chance that lawyer is trained in Canada. So he will be using all the Anglo-Saxon principles that he learned in law school in Canada. So those are the elements that I try to transmit to the students during the course.
Well, thank you so much. And the last but not least question is, how do you assess student progress and ensure they are meeting courses objectives?
Okay. Well, first of all, I treat the students as professionals. And so in a professional context, I expect when you come to a meeting, I expect everybody to be prepared for that meeting and to participate in the meeting. So the evaluation of my class is basically divided into 3 parts. Well, first of all, I will be evaluating the students on their preparedness of the topics that are presented and discussed in class. I will evaluate on the oral participation during the class, and also on the different legal reasoning that student has. And how does that translate? Well, it translates into basically 3 parts. First of all, there's the evaluation will take the form of a continuous assessment. In other words, 20% for class attendance. So you have to come to every class on time. The second is 40% of class participation. participation. So if you come on time to every class and you participate, you can have already 60% of the passing grade. And then finally, the last part is a written exam that it will count for 40% of the final grade.
Nice. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your insight and approach to teaching.